Didn't recognize you as Mary.
Yeah, hi, Trinka. She uses my computer all the time for her Zoom dance classes. So,
Oh,
yeah,
Wow.
that's what we're doing.
Well, I'm sure people will be coming in, but I thought maybe we should start, Catherine. And
yeah.
so I want to welcome all of you. I'm really, really happy to be having this conversation, to be as welcoming as we possibly can with our language in the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. Our leader tonight is Catherine Powell, who is an Episcopal priest and has been in catechesis for more years than I know about, I think. You can give that.
3 years.
But she has been a Episcopal school chaplain and a rector, and had catechesis going on in these various places that she's ministered, and now she's retired and putting her hands in where she can. Catherine is on our board at CCTheo, so very happy to have her experience and expertise with us. I also wanted to welcome Karen, Karen Maxwell, who was very kind to talk to Catherine in her preparation, and who comes here from CGS USA in the Formation Committee. And so Karen, welcome. And the rest of you as well. Joan Miller, I haven't seen you in ages, so smile a lot. It's a treat. Still can't talk. I thought we'd open with a prayer. Gracious God, we seek to serve your children, regardless of their circumstances, and to welcome them as graciously as you would yourself. Open our ears and hearts to hear our own catechesis language through the ears of people who are not in our denomination or related to Montessori education or at all familiar with the buzzwords of CGS. Help us to hear ourselves as they may hear us, and to find ways to bridge any gap between us with accessible language and gracious hospitality. We thank you for your presence among us. Amen.
Amen.
Catherine, take it away.
All righty. Well, this topic has interested me, as it probably has most of you, ever since I began work with CGS, which I was first trained in 1994, so it's been a while. But, I had to think really hard about how to go back to my congregation and explain this whole new way of being with children. So it's nothing new. But there are a couple of things that have spurred me on recently. One is that I developed a presentation that I could take out to congregations about just the need to support children in their spiritual lives. And for that presentation, I did a lot of research on studies about the stress that children are under. And we're hearing even more about it with the pandemic, but the levels of anxiety and depression, admissions to mental health behavioral health programs in hospitals, suicide, all those things are really alarming when you see the statistics. So that's one thing that pushed me, because I feel we have this great gift for children's inner lives. And I'm like, why aren't more people just hungry for it and flocking to it? And secondly, it seems that in the Episcopal denomination, the Episcopal Church, we had some good momentum, but in the diocese where I've been, we've lost that. That may not be true all over, but again, I wonder, there are lots of reasons, but one of the reasons, I think, one of the things that may keep us from being able to reach out effectively, or other people to come in effectively, is issues of language. And I wanted to read you one thing off the internet, that there's been this really kind of hilarious discussion going on. It's from a guy, it's the page is Episcopalians on Facebook. And there's a guy who was, he just says he was part of another denomination, and he became an Episcopalian. And he was so proud because he learned that the word acolyte meant, you know, those teenagers that help at the altar servers, or the teenagers that sat up front, was kind of his version of it. And so he moved to a new church, and there was nobody sitting up front except a bunch of old people up around the altar. And one day he said to the people in coffee hour or whenever after the service, gosh, it's too bad we don't have any acolytes. And the people just pounced on him. I guess they were a little sensitive, but he said, I said, too bad, this is from his post. I said, too bad there were no acolytes. Wow, was I ever wrong? How could I have ever been so stupid? The moral of the story, this is his continuing post. This is an excellent way to exclude people and drive them from your midst. Come up with specialized vocabulary, make its knowledge a badge of belonging, and imply that the knowledge is baked into every worthy person's brain. Teenagers do it, gang members do it, and we do it. So people took all sorts of offense at him, and then others agreed with him, but I thought he definitely brings up the topic. So what we want to do today is spend the first part of our time kind of looking at the issue and how we've experienced, either personally or with families or people we've dealt with, and then spend the second part of our time looking at solutions and words and phrases that have worked and that help. And Devette Hines is going to be with us during that part and chime in a bit too, because she has been successful in using some different kinds of language. So the first thing we wanted to do was invite you all into pairs and first ask you to think for a minute about when you very first came into catechesis of the Good Shepherd. What were your associations with the word catechesis? And we'd just like you to, take 30 seconds now to think about that, or even jot a note, and then talk about that a little bit in pairs. I think for 2 or 3 minutes, and Catherine will guide us through that. You're muted.
In about half a minute, I'll send you to breakout rooms, and then about 3 minutes after that, we'll bring you back. Diane.
I like that message as we're talking. It's like the host muted everyone. Well, does anybody want to say anything about that little bit of conversation? Actually, you're mostly muted, so you would have to unmute to say something.
Well, I'm curious if anyone found it a stumbling block, because Shelley and I didn't.
I didn't either. It was all news to me.
Well, I think for me, it was only a stumbling block in the sense that it was new and unfamiliar, and that I knew catechism, but catechesis was not something that was particularly familiar. And so maybe it was both a question and an invitation and a barrier at the same time.
I didn't find it, it was different. It was a different word, but I associated with catechism also when I first heard about it. So I really didn't have, and then once I knew what it meant, I loved knowing the meaning, but bringing it to my church where they had not really heard that word used that often, it was a process of educating, and they accepted that. They didn't want to change the name. They wanted to know more about what that meant. And this is what it's called, that kind of thing. But it was a process of information for them.
Yeah, I think we were saying this something in my little group too, like that it was new, but for some parents, it does seem to be more of a challenge maybe than for others.
My association was very much the catechism, and I grew up carrying that thing back and forth from home and saying the answers to questions, memorizing them on the walk to school and getting tested on them. And there was no thinking, no freedom, and no real teaching. You know, the teachers just said, read this, book and memorize this chapter, and that was it. And so not a very helpful association for me. And probably my generation, which we are, of course, aging out slowly. So that might be a good thing.
I associated it with my Roman Catholic cousins. And I lived 2 blocks away from Regina Caeli Church and church school when I was a child. So it was like what a lot of my neighbors were doing. They did the catechism. And so I thought of it as very Roman Catholic. I'm Episcopalian, and but it seemed normal. It just, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just normal, but more Roman Catholic, yeah.
And for me, when I heard of Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, that was a new program. And what had jumped down at me, and it was an article that you wrote, Catherine, was the references to things that I recognized as being Montessori. And so that's what jumped off the page to me. And then, okay, the name of this is Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. I had never heard or used the word catechesis in any other way.
Mm-hmm.
I think now the word catechesis is used much more commonly than it did 20 years ago.
Really? I've never heard it in the Episcopal Church. myself. I mean,
Well, this is in the Catholic Church.
uh-huh.
It seems that everybody's common theme, though, is that they needed a translator. They needed someone to explain the terminology to them. It wasn't a common or recognized necessarily word that had the connotation that we use it in. Or Catherine was talking about there was no freedom in her, I'm assuming, Presbyterian sounding background. You know, so that's kind of, and for us, my people, it's brand new terminology. Most of my church is unchurched prior to coming to us. So they have no background for, we actually don't use it in our marketing materials because it is such a strange word that requires specialized discussion.
Interesting.
Yeah, as Catherine and I were talking about language, preparing for this, we identified that there's some language which is an active obstacle. You know, like if I'm an Episcopalian and all the materials talking about Mass and my particular Episcopal communities never use that term, then it's a block to me because it says to me, this is for people who use that term. But also there's language that is not really a block, but it may not communicate. And maybe catechesis for some of us was a word like that, like, oh, that's an interesting word, but I can't just read it and know what it means. I don't, oh yeah, of course, you know. So those two things seem like they can both be things to think about as we're thinking about our language. Well, we wanted to ask you to think about other words or phrases that have been at times a challenge, or maybe, you know, they can be heard putting people in or keeping people out, or it's something that's said different in your denomination, differently in your denomination from other denominations, or yeah, even people who are not of churches or trying to find their way into a church, something they would hear and not understand. So let's again take about 30 seconds to think of some of those and maybe jot notes if you want. And then if you could type them into the chat, we'll have a list and we can take a look at some of them.
I don't know how to do this.
Yes. Oops.
These are very interesting. Has everybody had a chance? Type now or forever hold your peace. Does everybody know how to do it?
I do, but I can't do it.
You do, but it's not working. On the iPad, you have to tap more and then it gives you chat as an option.
Or we could just ask you to say it, what you're thinking.
There's a thought. Well, looking at them, they seem to fall, some of them fall into some categories. I mean, some of them are Montessori terms, like practical life. Some of them are theological terms, parousia, original sin. Were there others? Paranesis. Some of them are probably denominational differences. Verger, vestry, warden, nave, narthex. I worked for a while in a cathedral. They have another whole set. You know, meet the verger in the slight. You're like, okay, I have no idea what that is.
Some of them are very much atrium words, where other ones might be words that you would use with parents.
Right. And I thought Suzanne's question was good and probably speaks to our experience. Some of these words are words that have invited us into a new way of thinking about theology or about children, the life of the Spirit. And some of them might have pushed us away or certainly not communicated because we didn't know what they meant. Did you want to comment on that, Suzanne?
Well, I guess I feel like I'm feeling a little pushback against feeling like we have to guess at what words people already know and will feel receptive to. And some things really do have names, you know. Little children love to learn the names. Is there something about getting older that we don't want to feel like we don't already know something that somebody's telling us about? So we're going to dumb it down so everyone feels safe. I'm just feeling a little prickly about this issue, although I'm here, so I'm really open to it as well.
We've discovered that we give a glossary to our parents because there are some terms that we use that parents need to know because their kid goes home and uses it that they might not recognize otherwise, or we might say in passing and they might not recognize, but that gives them the accessibility to have information. And we found that in my Methodist experience, there are just some things that they're Greek words that cover a lot of territory. And you can use that one Greek word and it means a whole bunch. And we don't want to lose that. We made the decision that we will define those terms to help people along. We won't try to use 26 words to talk about what is happening during the final week of Jesus' life and the resurrection. We're just not doing that.
I think sometimes as we've been in this work a long time, the words just become so normal to us that we forget perhaps that some people don't know what they mean. So I think what I'm noticing or thinking about is, like in my formation courses, to be approachable and not be someone who thinks I know everything and you don't know anything, you know. And to tell people, if you have a problem with a word or if you don't understand something, please ask. I mean, I've always believed that if you don't learn something, you can't know it. So there's no like embarrassment in asking a question. So, I mean, even just knowing that people don't understand all the terms, perhaps.
Keep in mind that the conversation is about gatekeeping. And so we're talking about people that have never encountered this before.
Mhm.
So what are we going to say to those people so that they feel like it's for them and perfect, you know, or welcoming, or, you know, so yes, in our courses, I think we have to use what you might call our professional language. You know, that all has a very specific and good meaning, but in our sign, in our notice in the bulletin, in our website, what are going to be the best ways to welcome people into CGS?
I have had people come as visitors to Washington, D.C., come to our parish specifically because they know it has Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. And I've been told that several times over the years.
That's great.
So it's, you know, catechesis may sound odd, but we have to be careful when we think about, you know, branding, that rebranding might not be desirable either.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I start out, that once people are in and their children experience it and they experience it, they love it. I mean, it feeds the soul. It's wonderful, but there are so many people and so many congregations that that won't try it, or just, you know, say I read the material. I mean, we joke about it, but you know, at Episcopal conferences, people say, "Oh, that's a Roman Catholic program." Not that that means we couldn't do it, but to them it means, yes, we could do it, but we'd have to make all these changes and be sure that theology, where we can just get this other package, more packaged thing. So I think a lot about how to talk to those people that are at the gate, I guess.
After how many years, I still get regularly asked, but don't you want to switch to godly play? And I'm just like, nope. I don't want to switch to godly play. I think this is better. But I think I have sort of a legacy position in my parish because I've been doing it so long.
Yeah.
I have had less success at drawing in, you know, new volunteers.
Yeah, that's a big key too. But that's another, I mean, that can be so many issues, not just language. That's just a small part, probably. But definitely another issue of spreading.
But I think that a lot of things about catechesis, like the training, the length of the training, the intensity of the training, you know, those too are you know, obstacles for some people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So one of the issues I have is that we are frequently shortened to catechesis, which is not a really good term. And when I have asked people not to use that word, just to call it the Good Shepherd, I feel like it captures much more closely to our message. Our message is about Jesus, the Good Shepherd.
Yeah. The Good Shepherd program, the Good Shepherd Atrium, I've seen those used in different places.
I don't use those. I just stay with Good Shepherd.
We're going down the hall for the Good Shepherd. Well, are we ready to shift to some of the more positive ideas, solutions that people have, or ideas about other ways of communicating our message? Does anybody want to mention another language or phrasing challenge before we do? Yeah, Susan?
Yeah, I can't say this is a challenge, but more of an observation. I've been involved since 1990, so 3 decades. And my memory, those of you who are with me, correct me if you have a different memory, was that we all said catechesis of the Good Shepherd, like all the time, the whole phrase. And what seems very commonplace now in even when I'm at something that has people from across the country is CGS. That somehow I see a lot of head nodding. Thank you. It helps me feel that my memory's intact. But I'm not sure what that means, but I've noticed it. And then I noticed as new people become involved, it's very quick to automatically be CGS.
Susan, I echo that. And it reminds me of NATO. You know, it feels very like military and governmental. You know, we also years ago always said catechesis of the Good Shepherd.
It was only in preparing for this conversation that I realized that at our school, people come to Christian Family Montessori School. They're not coming to Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. And then when they get a tour, they're shown the atrium. And somewhere in there, the word Catechesis of the Good Shepherd is introduced, but they're visually in the room, you know, when they first hear it. And so we've really had a way to kind of jump over this that I had not ever appreciated before because of that dynamic of being a school with a name that communicates something and then a school with an atrium in it. And so eventually they all get familiar with that language, but it's not right up front and center. So maybe thinking about people are coming to your parish and then to the atrium, or, you know, I don't know if that kind of thinking will get us around it a little bit.
Well, that does kind of move us towards solutions, which was our second part of this discussion. So we were thinking of going back into pairs and just talking to each other about what kinds of words or phrases we've used that seem to really click with people. They seem to get it without explanation, you know, without our having to explain, well, this means this, but you just said it's child-centered or whatever the words or phrases were. And maybe a lot of us have thought about how we put the note in the bulletin or the letter or email that goes out to families. What kinds of phrases you've used that you thought really got the idea across without having to go into theological detail. So let's take or sit with it for about 30 seconds, and then we'll go this time for a little longer. I think we were thinking around eight minutes or so. So we'll have a little more time for conversation, go into pairs.
And the computer will reshuffle you all.
Oh. Well, let me say that Devette is going to be talking to us after this. So those of you who might be paired with Devette, you can let her save some of her talk for when we come back.
Did you get invited to a room, Annette?
Well, we had a very interesting discussion. I want to have plenty of time to hear from Devette, and I guess that would be our next thing. Are we all back, Catherine? I guess we have to be, because you brought us back.
I exercise my control.
Well, Devette has worked really hard on knowing who her audience is and using words and images that they can understand. And so she has really kindly offered to share some of that with us. And after we hear from her, we might have a little time to share some of the other ideas that we heard in our pairs. So thank you, Devette. You want to take it away for 10 minutes or so? Oh, can't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah, that's going to be the catchphrase of 2020. You're muted. All right, I just want to make sure, Catherine, can I share screen?
Yes, I will set you up to do that.
You're muted again.
I'm on a tablet, which I don't normally use. And for some reason, when I switch, it turns off my camera and my...
Okay, well, I just made you a co-host, Yvette.
Thank you. All right. All right, we're going to give it a whirl. Share screen.
Yay, there you go.
Okay. All right. So when Catherine and Catherine approached me, we really wanted to look at this idea of gatekeeper. So we're not speaking of people who are already in the atrium or people who are in our courses. This is people who pop up at your parish, people who are, clicking around on Facebook, or they're checking you out before they come. And so we did find that catechism language problematic for us in our Episcopal setting. I also will say the terms I use are going to appeal to my demographic. You really need to do a little study of who you are speaking to, and that'll help you with your terminology. And so we really did sort of a drill down of who's coming to us, right? And I can talk more. You can reach out to me about how to do that, but I know my demographic. Let me just say that. They are well-educated, upper income, very well-versed in Montessori, read all the latest and greatest or not so great on parenting. And so I have to keep up with all that stuff as well. So when my parents come to the atrium, everyone in there, all of our adults, we are well versed in the current trends in parenting, the language that our parents are going to be using, and when we can speak that language back to them, that also gives them confidence. And that we're not just grandma Sunday school, but we actually understand the challenges they have parenting today. And they're actually very pleasantly surprised. And I sort of prime the pump by I have a little bookshelf of all these books. So they know I've read that too, or we're very well aware of the developmental needs of their children. And they're pretty well versed in Montessori. So that's who I'm talking to. You may have a different demographic, but this is what works for us. So I'd love to just take Sophia and John Agobi and pick them up. And I'm going to use Sophia's language and John's language. My favorite catchphrase right now is the serene enjoyment of God. That's from Sophia. What is the atrium? It's a place for the serene enjoyment of God. Isn't that lovely? It's Lent.
Wow.
We need peace. It's a place for the serene enjoyment of God. What is Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, right? And so we call it sacred space, sacred time. What's the atrium? It's a place for the holy. It's a place for the sacred, right? Move on. Oops. See if I can. I don't have a mouse on my glass here.
Oh.
I've got a very fancy tablet. That's what do you call it? There we go. Here's another one. It says nurturing. So this is our catchphrase. And so this is on every email, every flyer, everything we send out. What's your vision statement? Who are you? Ours is nurturing the spiritual life of the child using a Montessori approach, right? What is Catechesis of the Good Shepherd? Kara and I just talked about, we're nurturing the spiritual lives of children, right? And how are we different than other pedagogies in the church for training children? Oh, we're using a Montessori approach, right? And what we're pairing CGS with the spiritual, because everybody wants to be spiritual. If you read the Pew studies, and you should pull the latest Pew study on religion and see what it's saying about people's attitudes towards church. We're talking not to people in church. We're speaking to people who are coming to the church, right? I'd really encourage you, maybe I can send you a link to those, Catherine, if people don't know where to find it. So nobody wants to be religious. Everybody's spiritual though, even people who don't go to church. So CGS is spiritual with Montessori antecedents and a pedigree. So for those Montessori insiders, oh, is Montessori religious? Gee, golly, have you read Secret of Childhood? Really? Have you read Discovery of the Child? Really? It's filled with religious language, right? And then I'll talk about the absorbent mind. And then if they're really, really interested, then I hand them the child in the church. And so I've just already given them knowledge of Montessori that they didn't have before. But what got them in the door was spiritual and Montessori. Okay. Then we talk this whole idea of nurturing your child, right? Spiritual versus religious, and it's holistic. Nobody's going to smack your child with a ruler if they didn't memorize their Bible verse that week. We're not about giving rewards and treats, right? We're there for your child to have a spiritual experience. Think of like a retreat for your child, right? We as adults will take time for the holy for ourselves. And I find even more so now we talk about self-care, right? Children need a place for self-care, right? So parents, you want to give this back to parents and say, oh, you know, it's very holistic experience. It is a way for self-care for children. And where in the world do they have that space? It doesn't exist. But we have this beautiful space called the atrium where all that can take place. It's beautiful. Come see, right? That is it's very inviting. The other buzzword in education right now is child-led, right? Oh, it's child-led. They talk about design thinking, individualized education, right? These are all things that Montessori does. These are all things we do in the atrium. So again, for my education savvy parents, these are the buzzwords they're looking for, right? It's spiritual, it's a sanctuary, it's self-care, it's holy, and wait, it's child-focused, it's child-led, design thinking, executive functioning. They have all these opportunities to make choices in the atrium, right? It's geared towards the individual, which, dare I say, other programs in the church that are popular and are Montessori inspired do not offer the child. And so there I can make the argument for CGS. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I can make the argument for Catechesis of the Good Shepherd without even saying the name of another program. Because then what people are thinking is, wait, this other thing we do, it's adult-centered. It's not child-focused. It's not individualized, right? It's the group. And I've had people come to our church who are at other churches because their child couldn't sit in the circle. And they were banished to the doorkeeper. And one of those kids, he's in college now, and he went to one of the top high schools in the country. I guess it's the #1. It's a very snazzy tech school here that's geared toward the sciences. That kid was a genius. And even at 6 years old, I was giving him level 2 stuff to do. But in this other program, he couldn't sit in the circle because he was bored. And it was not individualized. It did not answer the needs of him as a child. Okay, next one. What are we doing? We're equipping parents. So when you have to talk to clergy or a pastoral committee, and they say, well, why should we invest in this and the training and the environment and all that? What everyone wants to do and what your pastor or your rector wants to get off their list of things to check off, how do we equip parents in the church? Basically what we're doing in the atrium is parent coaching. Now, I understand a lot of people have, they drop off the kids, you send out a newsletter. Maybe you have like the liturgy of the letter Pentecost with parents. The other thing that we do in our atrium is we do a lot of parent ed and coaching, right? And we position ourselves as expert in what we do, right? And that spills over to parents trusting us with their children and really coming to us and asking us really real life things. And particularly now in COVID, I've had parents call me, their kids are having nightmares. One child's music teacher, the father died of COVID. One kid was just totally to pieces because one family just said the hell with it and they were moving to Canada. They just had it because they had friends there and their kids were in school. And so they come to us and they'll, well, how do we discuss this with the children? How do we pray with the children? We give them the kids time to let all this stuff out, right? So when we're meeting for prayer, this comes out in the children's prayer. And then I go to the parents and I say, these are some things we've been hearing in the atrium. These are ways that we help the children soothe themselves, right? How do we help the children have sort of a center, to have resilience, to have grit, like all of that stuff that the parents are trying to on their own instill in their children. They don't realize that the church and the community of the church, it's a big, we walk hand in hand in that. And I think particularly now in COVID, this is very important because people are isolated and they need that community and they need that, maybe their parents are far away. Maybe their support system isn't there, but they do have the church. And so the atrium is a way of knitting all these people together and families, not just drop off your kid and make sure they know the stuff for First Communion. Okay. And then how we help them live their baptismal covenant. Like, well, I was that parent. When I said, I will, God, I had no idea how I was going to do it. And the atrium, the atrium showed me the way. And so I tell that story to parents and I laugh and they say, oh no, I was you. I came in and I was like, oh no, not my child. And I wanted to make sure everything was correct. And I wanted to make sure the people who were going to be sharing God with my children, where do their thinking and my thinking align and how does it align with the church? And I tell them the beautiful thing about catechesis is that we just read what's there. We don't add our testimony. It's not about me. It's about giving your child the beauty of the church and without a filter, right? So that's equipping our parents. I'm gonna give Catherine the slide. I'm gonna speed it up. I talked about Montessori, using that authentic Montessori language, because I got the AMI versus AMS people coming into my atrium and looking around. Do I know what I'm talking about if I'm gonna put Montessori in my title? I better, because my parents know Montessori and we have a fair amount of people who've had Montessori kids. Even my rector's kids went to Montessori and his wife. So we have a very knowledgeable Montessori crowd. All right. I heard earlier that Good Shepherd approach, Good Shepherd language, right? Here's my elevator speech. If somebody calls and they want to visit the atrium, it's child-led, it's holistic, it's spiritual, it's a sacred space. We use a Good Shepherd approach, right? If they're still on the phone, I got Jesus in there, and I'll say, known as catechesis of the Good Shepherd. Okay. But I don't lead with, that is not the lead. Catechesis of the Good Shepherd is not the lead for me. The lead is, what do we do with the children? And then I come around to, well, how do we accomplish all these wonderful things? We have this amazing program called Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. And then I say to the parents, come and see. I don't tell them it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't tell them it's better than anything else in the church. I tell them, come and see, and you can decide for yourself if it's a fit for your family. So already they know I'm not trying to sell them something. I want them to see if it's a fit for their family.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm already interested in them personally, right? In that 2-minute phone call. All right, these are just a couple of ads that we've had out and about. And there's our tagline, nurturing the spiritual life of the child using Montessori approach. Everything print that we send out. This was in a rec magazine that goes to Fairfax County, 120,000 homes. And it has all the mommy and me classes for kids, soccer and stuff in the summer. And this is for a camp, and then they can call. And the text here was the church website. So I didn't say Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. I said Montessori Atrium. My parents are going to say, well, what the heck is that? They're going to go to the website and then they're going to read about it. But I want them to stop. And my signal is the kid with a good shepherd. So they see Jesus and they see sheep. If you are a no Jesus baby, as my daughter would say, you're going to keep scrolling, right? But if that's intriguing to you and you're wondering how Montessori and church goes together, then you make the call, then you make the visit. All right, this is one we did for an open house on Instagram. Do you see Catechesis of the Good Shepherd is teeny tiny, right? It's like 8 point, but then the pictures tell the tale. You see all the kids have something in their hands. It's hands-on and they're engaged. So if I'm a parent looking at that, the catechesis word doesn't scare me. I'm not even looking at that. I'm looking at the kids and I'm looking at the material, right? And so again, that would make me click further. If I just said something that said Catechesis of the Good Shepherd with a Good Shepherd statue, I may think, wow, is this Episcopal? Is it Catholic? Like, what is it, right? But this very much, just without saying anything, I don't need 10 paragraphs. The picture says it. And then you can go to the church website and there's like, I don't know, they're updating the website, but there's tons if you want to read more about Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. This is just the gatekeeping bit, right? This is to get you in the gate.
Right.
So Catherine was talking about being visual. I'm a very visual person. So I let the visuals do my talking. Here's one we did for the toddler group. And this was on Instagram, on the Facebook, and we did candle mass with presentation in the temple. So you see the presentation in the temple, right? And it says, come celebrate the feast of the presentation of the infant Jesus. So Jesus is in there. So the no Jesus baby will not come, right? So we are open to everyone. It's ecumenical. So if you're good with Jesus, you're good with us. Come. And then it says storytelling. We made storytelling is the reading of the gospel of the presentation. And then we did candle decorating and they made crepes and whatever. And this is for anybody to come. When people come and they say, oh my gosh, this is amazing. What is it? Then I say Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. And this is something we've had in our church for over 20 years. Here, read more about it. And yes, this is our Sunday school. But if I just said, without the pictures, Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, what would I say? Come for candle mass, come for, the pictures tell the story without me having to talk about it. And then I want people to get them into the environment, like Catherine said they do at CFMS. They come to the school, they know it's Christian Family Montessori. You're not going to come to All Saints Episcopal Church. You already know it's a church, right? But what is the draw is, well, this is different kind of children's church. Here's one, nothing at all. It just says All Saints Montessori Atrium, but what is the main element? It's the Good Shepherd. So if I'm used to have a cracker, read the gospel, go to church, right? I'm knowing that, man, this church is not have a cracker, read the gospel, go to church, or make something out of egg cartons, because that is actually interesting. It's material for children, right? So if you're that, I mean, there's nothing, I mean, I did the old fashioned Sunday school of making stuff out of egg cartons, but I'm just saying, And this is what positions CGS. So I'm sorry, I'm guilty of that. But this is what positions Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. And again, when they go to the website, they can read 9 yards about Catechesis of the Good Shepherd and Sophia Cavaletti and John Agobi and 1954 and all that. It's on the church website. And I think I'm finishing up. This one was for the Moms Club. So I'm just telling you how we reach out. So if you have, there's like Moms Club International, and then there's like Mothers of Preschoolers, which is more evangelical. But Moms Club is pretty ecumenical. And this is something we had for them. They asked us to host a morning just for the Moms Club. And that here is like they have like 800 people on their mailing list here, right? It's for like all of Alexandria, this end of Northern Virginia. And what did we say? Enjoy the Montessori atrium. I don't know anything about Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, but what do they see? Practical life. And this was for toddlers, and they see the Good Shepherd. So they see Montessori and they see Jesus just in the pictures. I don't have to explain it. So if that interests you, you will come or you will click on it. And then it says, nurture your child's spirit in an authentic Montessori atrium environment. Because there's also this element of, is it authentic Montessori or is it not, right? We are authentic Montessori, and it's a place of peace and joy, right? So these parents want peace, they want joy, they're all about Montessori, and then I end at the bottom, I say, nurture your child, nurture yourself. Because when they come, it's peace for them because they're not allowed to talk. They have to sit there and just enjoy being with their child, and they have to park their phone and watch your child toddle around and go to materials. And for them, even for the parents, are saying, wow, they needed that themselves, just a time to have peace and be quiet. And then we say, all are welcome. If I had said catechesis, catechism, is it Catholic? I don't know. I'm kind of half church. Maybe I shouldn't go to that. Maybe it's only for like really religious people, right? So this way it says, you know what? We're open to everyone. And I think that is it. Oh, I love this. This was like our most popular one because it was the dad, right? We had to cancel our Lent program because this was when COVID hit. But this was the last one I did. Sacred Space, Sacred Time. That was our Lenten series for parents with their young children. And so, again, it's inviting them in to Sacred Space. I didn't say, come to All Saints Episcopal Church for Lent. That's kind of boring. But Sacred Space, Sacred Time sounds a little bit more exciting. And then they can go to sharonchapel.org and read all about Lent. And again, what do you see? Good Shepherd, a little hint of Easter. It's pointing to who we are, right? And I think that was it. This was one that was more for the hardcore catechesis people. I do use the word catechesis of the Good Shepherd when I'm talking about people for training and whatnot. And this was an info, like just to find out what it's all about. And then I said, Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, and introduction. What is it? Nurturing the spiritual lives of children. And that's that line that we use for everything that we do. And then if you just seen, if that were just that without the pictures, it would not be exciting to me. But again, I don't just have a picture of a good shepherd, which is static. We have pictures of children, you know, in the atrium, experiencing God. And like Montessori says, through their hands, through touching, through actually, so for a parent who's like, I don't know how my kid would be in Sunday school. If I look at that, I see, wow, they can read books or they could work on materials and look, they pray. And also it's culturally responsive because what do you see? Golly, I've got different ethnicities of children. I've got a Black Madonna on my Advent table, right? This says, wow, maybe everybody in that church is not all the same. Maybe my family would be welcome. And you fill in the box of whoever your family is. So be careful and be mindful of that too. That's my biggest thing. What you're putting out there, is it culturally responsive in addition to the language? And if you don't know what that means, Catherine needs to have another talk about that. Okay, so that's just it. I didn't want to monopolize all the time. But I'll give the slide to Catherine. I think that was the last one. But that just sort of gives you an idea of how I have found with my demographic, let me quit sharing screens, and our people, what has worked for us. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Deb. Thank you.
All right, that's it.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to see what you're up to.
I know, I never turn off. I have to turn off my atrium brain. But you know, I think everyone here, you're here because you love it and you want to invite more people into this work, right? And you don't want there to be any barriers because we do love this so much. And so I'm always open to what people are doing. And I'm always trying, as you know, to invite people in.
Thanks. Yay. And I think in some other discussions too, we talked about images speak louder often than these words and phrases, and that our photographs and even little videos are very powerful. We don't have much time left. We wanted to give each of you a chance to think about whether there was anything specific that you wanted to take from this discussion. So, Catherine, why don't we do pairs again, just for 2 minutes maybe, and you can tell somebody if you have an idea of something that you might want to change or try or consider as a result of the conversation, and then we'll kind of pull it back together and end with a prayer after that.
So about 3 minutes?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. I just put myself in the room with the one person who was alone, and it happened to be you.
Very good.
Yeah, wow, Devette did such a nice job.
She did, and really considering everything she had to say, she moved pretty quickly.
Yeah, the PowerPoint helped.
And she was very positive too, which I appreciated.
You, we didn't ask people to put into the chat their alternative language that they generated.
Oh, no.
So maybe we can ask them to do that, and then that'll be a record people can get from the meeting. They can save the chat, and then they'd have all those words.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
I can't believe that behind your head. I used to have that, Lydia. I used to have that.
Isn't that a wonderful painting?
When I first saw it, which was like soon after I was ordained, it just thrilled me because there were no.
Yeah. I saw it in a class. A classmate brought it in. We were doing work on women in the Gospels. We each had to present one. And so this woman presented Lydia, and she brought in the painting. And I came home and just went on and on about it to Charlie. So he bought it for me as a graduation gift. That artist lives near here.
Oh, I had all her books, and we met her once.
Yeah.
She was a character herself.
Yeah. Mary
character,
yeah.
and she has the poems that go with the one. Anyway, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm still interested in sending the letter to the board, and just as a list of things that we thought of. I doubt anything will come of it.
I
But
think you can pull that from the chat. Karen being here can add to it, you know, if it comes up in conversation, since she's in communication with all those people.
So
meaning,
you can just tell the group that I'm going to do that. I don't think we get into who wants to sign it, or
I agree.
We don't have time anyway.
Yeah. Just say we're going to take the best of these ideas and put them in a letter
to share them
to the board. And then the question is really where this language needs to be more welcoming. So it, you know, it doesn't have to be in the course descriptions, but maybe it should be you know, on the website, or you know.
Yeah, especially that opening page of the website. I don't understand why they had some really nice little videos that were just right at the top and they're gone. I don't know. I thought they were the best thing.
Yeah, again, visual stuff is good.
Yeah. Okay, so when we come back, we'll ask them to type in their ideas about good language or good phrases, helpful language.
Yeah, from the
And-
last partnership.
Yeah,
If they want to add from this one, that's fine. So that can be sort of our typewritten record of good ideas, you know.
Okay.
And I can
Okay.
send that and the PowerPoint to everybody on this list that came.
Oh, great. Yeah. I love Devitt's language myself. I'm like, I'll go sit in your atrium.
I know she has some kind of charism that is just unbelievable. Yeah. And every once in a while I see her with a group just killing it. Makes me just tickle.
Oh, well, welcome back, everybody. We only have 5 minutes. And we were hoping that, well, we were hoping to have even more time to talk. But one of the things we would like to ask you to do before you leave tonight is to go to the chat and type in words and phrases that you found helpful in communicating with people outside the group. That discussion that you had just before Devette spoke. And that way we can all have a record, both of things, words and phrases that are challenging for some people and some that are helpful. And if you want to take a screenshot of the chat.
No, I can send it. I can save it and send it to everyone.
Catherine will list them all, both sides, and send them to you, and also share that slides in case you'd like to, use some of that. Would anybody like to comment on anything that they may hope to do or try to do a little differently? Tori, I see your hand.
Get more photos up on my church's website and Facebook page.
Yeah.
And make catechesis of the Good Shepherd not the biggest words on the page. Like make that an undercurrent and focus more on it being a way of formation or this nurturing the spiritual life of the child, incorporating those phrases.
Yeah. I know the word Montessori doesn't work in all of our situations. We were discussing that in one of our breakout groups. For some of us, it says great things to parents. And for others, parents have heard all different things and they're not sure. So that might be a word for some of us to use or to emphasize, and others to express things about Montessori education using different phrases.
Yeah, I know we just have a minute, but I did want to say that I shared that I did have a talk I had to give at a church where I was told not to use Montessori. So I had to drop Montessori and Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. And they want me to do a training for them. And they had about 100 people come to the lunch. So
well,
you can do it, but you got to know who you're talking to.
Yeah. Thanks for the comments. I haven't had a chance to read them, but they look great. And I wanted to tell you all that that I'm gonna share the list of ideas we had just with this Catechesis of the Good Shepherd USA board, just in case they would find it helpful as they create new written material or opening page of the website, that kind of thing. So so in that way, it will be shared a little more broadly and maybe be helpful to people beyond us. So let's, we could all talk more, I think, but let's take 15 seconds of quiet and then I will end with a prayer. Loving God, we thank you for drawing us together, for reminding us of these other friends who share some of the loves of our own hearts, who care about your children and about this work with families and children. May the words that we've heard and said and thought about become seeds planted for us to grow in any way you would have them grow, and to help us draw children ever closer to you for the richness and the serene joy that they may come to know. Bless each person here, and may they find peaceful rest this evening. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for taking.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks.
night.
Good night. Yeah.
Nice to meet some of you for the first time.
Yeah. There they go.
Joan, I love seeing